people are feeling pain. So what do we as societies do to alleviate that pain? How do we address that cause of it? And it could be a physical pain from an accident. It could be emotional pain. It could be pain from abuse from childhood. It could be pain somewhere it's coming from. And we don't have these conversations enough in both our societies, frankly, I think in Mexico and the United States. The one thing I think that we do well in Mexico is that you talk about death better than we do in the United States. Mm-hmm. It's one thing that in the United States we talk, we want to live forever. But here, like, there's an embracing of death as part of the cycle of life. Which I
sometimes as a joke.
And a joke even. But even then, I think that's an example that heavy conversation can be had and discussed here. But there's no conversations on pain.
Yes.
And I don't give people a solution. You can find a solution in church or religion or
meditation or whatever.
But we do need to know what is driving this pain crisis. And I think a lot of it, post-pandemic, with the way the economy is going, with the inflation, the way the war in Ukraine, the tension with China, all these things that come out weigh psychologically on humans.
Yes.
And people worry. And if you're parents, like we are, you worry about what kind of world the kid's going on. And so far, some people choose, I can't handle it, give me a Xanax.
Exactly.
But other people say, I can't handle it, I'll try this fentanyl P.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that we have to, where do you stop them from making that decision to go for the chemical to alleviate pain, vice having a discussion of what is actually causing them the stress and pain.
And I think it's also time to see what can we do for people who got addicted. Like, now this is a new process.
Because
what's next?
The aftermath of this is we have a lot of people, zombie-like people, addicted people. So what's next?
What's next?
I mean, there's a study, and I don't have the number here, but they talked about how much shorter your life expectancy goes once you've gone through addiction. Mm-hmm. And, sadly, even through rehab and everything else you try to bring them back into society, that person probably does not have much more time left. And their skill set is much more reduced than what it was beforehand. So we're having, this is part of the whole George Floyd issue. And how do we police the United States? Mm-hmm. How do you treat, help people who are in mental crisis, vice doing something because it's something outrightly criminal? Mm-hmm. And this is part of the debate too. Because with police officers, and I have a lot of friends with police officers in the United States, they're not trained to do that. And they're there to put kinetic force when something is really out of place. But if you don't have enough social workers or rehab centers or people who could intervene in these crises, mm-hmm. well then, we're going to have these things that when an addict breaks into a house to steal your TV for they can sell it to buy more oxycodone. Yes, there's a break in it, there's larceny here, but could you have stopped this person by getting them unaddicted and getting them into a different path, and then instead of sending them to police or sending them to jail for the larceny that was done? It's a societal debate. I don't have the answer, of course, but it's something we're going to have into. But again, this is less, unfortunately, it's becoming less of a U.S. question, and it's starting to go global. Because again, because fentanyl is so cheap, there's no excuse not to try to make a local market in any other country. And that's what really, in my official capacity, really makes me nervous. Right?
At least it's in the table right now.
At least
we're talking about it.
And that's why I always say, at least we're having a conversation about it. And again, going back to George Floyd, as horrific as that was there, I said, at least now we're having a conversation on what police brutality can look like.
Exactly.
Don't pretend it doesn't happen. Don't say, we'll talk about, no. Have the discussion, start the conversation. Don't know where the solution will go, but if you pretend it doesn't happen, that's not the best.
We're never going to change.
Exactly.
We're never going to change.
And every time, and I think about systemic failures, when you see where the system fails, when you look at, what's his name again, the financier who robbed all those people their money,
Ponzi scheme?
Yeah, the Ponzi. Well, who's a famous guy? I can't remember his name, though. When you read it, and in the movie, Madoff. Thank you. Bernie Madoff. Another movie I can plug there called The Wizard of Lies on HBO.
Great movie.
When you see how people who use the system and break it and use it to their own whims, and you realize, again, government systems, social systems aren't designed for good or bad. They just exist. Exactly. So when someone really does manipulate it and you see how, why we didn't catch this earlier, you go, wow, all these folks lost their life savings. It's terrible stories, but it's a real thing. And we have to have these constant adult conversations about, if you don't vote, this is a consequence. Yeah. If you don't pay attention, don't know how a financial system works, this is a consequence. If you go into the stock market and think, okay, hey, there are consequences. And that's one thing I tell my daughter is that, we don't do two things. We don't panic and we accept consequences. We say, if we're going to do something, think it through, because this can happen too. And if we get societies to think about the consequences of not just action, but inaction, then hopefully fewer of these books like Dope Sick and American Cartel will have to be written in the future.
Yes, that's a great advice.